question that Ijaz raised earlier about why have peace movements been unable to rise vertically, and the role that I see for the academic community and academic institutions like Jamia. First of all, this question of wanting to see textbooks, I know that I want to see textbooks from India, and there are Indian colleagues on the other side who want to see it as well, very seriously. We just have to find the forum for doing so. As to why peace movements haven't been able to rise vertically, frankly, I think that the goals have not been rationalized enough. We meet in these sort of spaces, create recommendations for bilateral cooperation, but there's really nothing to take it forward, because that creation of a non-judgmental space, but let's face it, sir, next time Shashi Tharoor comes around, you as an Indian, I as a Pakistani, we're going to be forced to take a step back and defend our state positions. That's what happens. It's that...
What did Shashi say? I don't know. I didn't.
Well, he had a very realist position on... He was basically putting on the table all those issues.
But he said what he used to say anyway.
He hasn't spoken on Pakistan in India, so I don't know. No, he's come to my university also many times, but I don't know what he said here. In fact, I was looking on the website.
He said if you don't want it, you can go London.
Listen, but
he said a number of things. But it's not just him, it's the example of, we need to sustain that non-judgmental space for any of your, for instance, your MOUs to be able to function. And to do that, I think you have to incentivize. I'm sorry, my sympathies on the MOUs, but they are the most difficult things to actually execute and make functional, even like within a city like Islamabad. And what we've found as a practitioner is data sharing is an incentive that works. It's something that sort of bypasses, or at least to some degree meets your goal of exchange between the two countries. Because if you change the visa regime, we can definitely share the data. And particularly on the socio-economic side, for instance, what are the barriers to mobility for minorities? Are there different barriers to mobility, socio-economic mobility for different minority groups? Does that sort of paradigm match what's happening in Pakistan? I mean, you've got really good institutes like Center for Policy Research and Pratap Mahanu Mehta and all of those people who are working on these areas. If we can get a sort of consortium together to actually share that data, then when you and I are forced to go back and defend our state positions, we would have accomplished something by then. The data sharing would have happened.
Well, as far as sharing syllabi is concerned, you can always make use of Project Gutenberg, frankly, because, I mean, you don't even need visas for that. You can be in front of your laptop and actually look at that. And Dr. Malik is other.
I want to add the same question to this. Najeeb, whenever we come across our Indian friends, they, after a while, after a few minutes of discussion, Indo-Pakistan thing, they tell us that even if you want conversation, we are told that there are more Muslims in India than in Pakistan. My counter question is always that how many there are, no one has an exact figure. You said 16, 17%, others gave 20%, some say 20 crores, some say 22 crores. This is one issue. Then my counter question is, okay, what is the representation in Indian administrative services, in Class 2 provincial services, in superior judiciary, in the Indian military, decision-making circles at the top level, in Indian Foreign Office, in South Law? How much is Muslim percentage representation in Indian corporate boardroom decision-making, in top education policy making, and then there are no answers. And then it goes into something else.
I mentioned here.
Are there any figures?
Yeah,
you said 16, 17%. So what is the Muslim representation in Indian administration? Indian IAS services, for which you superior judiciary?
These figures are there.
So what I can tell you. Yes, I know.
One question from Salman.
Very briefly, related to the question that Misa was raising. What are Indian Muslims studying these days? If the Jamia is a representative sample, what are Indian Muslims studying? That's one. And you also mentioned briefly that you are in the process of reaching out to madrasas. Is there any extremism emanating from those places like we have in Pakistan? And if so, then is the Jamia looking at it in any
You know, the Indian census is one of the most exhaustive exercises ever done anywhere in the world. It takes 10 years. It's done every 10 years. And the exercise starts, it's a 10-year bracket. The exercise starts about 5 years before, where the state mobilizes the entire civil service machinery to compile this statistics.
5 years before.
It starts, say, अगर 2011 में अगर ये छपना है, तो 2007-2008 में exercise शुरू होगी. Okay, who will do it? Who will cover what? So right from how many goats there will be to how many, what is the पैदावार of fasal, etc. Everything is done. Taiyari takes about 3-4 years. It's a huge exercise. It's this thicker document, and that will bring you the precise figure of what is the percentage of Muslims in India. And since I've been part of this exercise, I believe that it's a pretty fair exercise. Having said this, there will be a lot of Muslims who will meet in India. वो कहेंगे साहब ये झूठ बोलते हैं. हमारा तो सही फिगर लिखते ही नहीं. हमारे घर आए नहीं. मैंने कहा मेरे 2 बच्चे हैं, एक लिखिए. वगैरह वगैरह. They would. So therefore, if the census says 16%, we are actually 20%. Why you get these different figures? But there is a figure available done by the government, which I really believe it is quite good, because there is no reason for them to push away these figures. Similarly, on the Muslims in the civil services, army, judiciary, and so on, that's it's a very unsatisfactory figure. Percentages are available. जैसे कि IAS में शायद 5% है, क्या छपे हुए फिगर्स हैं. पुलिस में शायद 4% है, फॉरेन सर्विस में 3% है, आर्मी में 4-5% होंगे. But now, if you have 14% population, why are you 4%? That's a question which Muslims need to answer, and that's a question which the Indian state needs to answer.
That actually connects to the question from here. Then are there actually in terms of different kind of barriers for different communities to go for?
There are a lot of historical things.
कुछ तो उसकी वजह ये भी है ना कि 1947 में जो लीडरशिप क्लास थी मुसलमानों की,
देखिए इसमें कई चीजें हैं सर. हिंदुस्तान के आसूदा मुसलमान नॉर्थ इंडिया के पाकिस्तान आ गए. साउथ में मुसलमानों की पोजीशन बेहतर है नॉर्थ से, क्योंकि मद्रास से, केरला से, कर्नाटक से, हैदराबाद से ज्यादा लोग नहीं हैं. वहां दूसरा इन्फ्लक्स हुआ जब आज़ादी हुई और 50s में एक डिफिकल्ट टाइम था मुसलमानों के लिए, तो हैदराबाद से और बेंगलोर से और मद्रास से कई लोग विलायत और अमरीका गए. दैट इज देयर. सो while their position is better than North Indian Muslims, it is not so say great as to compare, say, with the Hindu upper class. There is also something which the Muslims in India don't wish to admit, and which is that the conversion pattern in North India from Hindus to Muslims, when the Muslims went into India, it was not the upper caste that converted. It was substantially the subordinate castes in India, because we had a caste system. We have a caste system that converted to Islam. I am not saying everybody came from subordinate caste, but a substantial part of Muslims came from these castes. 4 generation, 6 generation, 8 generation, आसूदा बनाने के लिए किसी आदमी को, why did he convert? If it's something which has happened to a lot of Christians in your country, you know, that you have the menial workers from Christians here. If this person was a menial worker and he converted to Islam thinking he would get a job, this, that, and the other, what kind of a job would he get with that educational qualification?
So, but this is referring to 40-50 years or?
No, sir, I am saying it's a continuous process of last 150 years. It has been a TV program later.
We have a TV program.
So I can't answer that question on TV because it is exceptionally sensitive to Muslims in India. It is exceptionally sensitive because
TV पे आजकल इतनी पाबंदियां लगती
हैं. नहीं वो इसलिए कि I'll tell you why. I'll tell you, Mohit sahab, why the Muslim doesn't want it, because there is a caste system in India. You cannot tell anybody कि तुम्हारे जो परदादा थे वो फलाने. Everybody says कि अगर मेरा परदादा था तो कम से कम ब्राह्मण तो था ही, अगर ओरिजिनल टर्क नहीं था.
Pakistanis have no business to create problems for Indian Muslims.
Absolutely.
TV or no TV.
No, so this is one issue which but I'm laying it to the table because, you know, institutes like this Jinnah Institute which are doing phenomenal work on problems in your own country, and that is why I'm here for. Okay, I should let you know okay, what is the reality of particularly the Muslim left. ये जो lot North India, and let me confine myself to North India, ये जो lot है post partition India, this was more or less leaderless. You leave out Maulana Azad and you leave out Sheikh Abdullah in Kashmir. You had only the second rung of leadership left and it was not intellectual leadership, it was some kind of second-rate political leadership. Abhi hand-holding kaun karta us waqt? The biggest hand-holder for Muslims in post-partition India was Nehru himself. कि भाई ये तो की कम्युनिटी है 15% है इनको और ये हम तो तकसीम के खिलाफ थे, हम तो पार्टीशन के खिलाफ थे, हमें इनकी इमदाद करनी है, हमें इनकी मदद करनी है.
फिर जो भोपाल और हैदराबाद में मुसलमानों की गारंटीड एम्प्लॉयमेंट, अगर उस्मानी यूनिवर्सिटी का रजिस्टर देखें तो इंडियन एक्शन तक सारे फैकल्टीज के सरबराह मुसलमान, उसके बाद अब जो है गुज़िश्ता 20 साल
उस्मानिया में तो खत्म हो गया,
उर्दू डिपार्टमेंट के चेयरमैन जो है वो मुसलमान.
तो ये एजुकेशन की जो बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है, एक तो लीडर्स की प्रॉब्लम है साहब, फिर आप एजुकेशन पे चले जाइए. जो हिंदुस्तान में सबऑर्डिनेट कास्ट थी उनके लिए एफर्मेटिव एक्शन के लिए रिजर्वेशन हो गई, क्योंकि मुसलमान में सो कॉल्ड कास्टिज्म नहीं है तो उनको रिजर्वेशन का भी फायदा नहीं मिला उस वक्त. एक तो ये क्लास बहुत एडवांस्ड सोशली क्लास नहीं थी, इकोनॉमिकली पिछड़ा हुआ था, एजुकेशनली धीरे धीरे पिछड़ता गया. तो जब कंपटीशन की बात आई हिंदुस्तान में कि साहब फलाने इम्तिहान के लिए कंपटीशन करना, अब तो हर चीज के लिए आपको कम्पीट करना है. मेरे यहाँ चपरासी की भी अगर आप जॉब चाहते हैं तो आपको कम्पीट करना है सर. When I go back, you know, I'm going to recruit some class, the class. 2,500 application है, 27 jobs के लिए.
Class 4.
नहीं class 3, जो clerks के लिए.
Class.
And we, because we believe in affirmative action, will take maximum number of Muslims and we do it openly. But ये 2,500 से 27 आएंगे, बाकी कहाँ जाएंगे? तो नौकरियों में इनकी एक बहुत बड़ा इशू आया. So families like mine who were, you know, probably leftovers and didn't cross over to this side, etc. We have 4 or 5 brothers, 3 of us got into the service, and we competed with everyone. We never had a problem. But there was this large section which was ill-educated, which has now in the last 10 years started receiving education. तो अगर आप statistics देखें, तो पिछले 10 सालों में suddenly you finding यूपी की जुडिशरी में कम से कम 15% मुसलमान, उत्तर प्रदेश की जुडिशियल सर्विस में 15% मुसलमान, उत्तर प्रदेश की जो पुलिस सर्विस है, क्लास 2 पुलिस DSP जिसको आप कहते हैं, वहां पर इस वक्त 8-9-10% मुसलमान. टीचिंग प्रोफेशन में बहुत मुसलमान. But it has only started happening in the 8-10 years when suddenly the Muslim who was good at handiwork, जो आपकी बुनाई का, कढ़ाई का, हाथ का काम करता था, शीशे बनाने का काम करता था, he suddenly started making money. And when he made money, then he started educating his children. आज रामपुर में, फिरोजाबाद में, मुरादाबाद में जो आप इलेक्शन देख रहे हैं साहब, ये अब गरीब मुसलमान और हिंदू का झगड़ा नहीं है पॉलिटिकल. अब हर मुसलमान जो है वहां पर वो अपने पॉलिटिकल हक मानता है और उसकी जेब में भी पैसे हैं. And this is a very interesting dimension that has happened, sir, post 91 after the demolition of the Babri Masjid. That suddenly you find politically the Muslim is demanding his political space in India. और खुलेआम टेलीविजन पे इस पे उस पे बैठ के वो बात करते हैं. आप देखिए पाकिस्तानी हमें मत कहिए ना, ये फोर्थ कॉलोनिस्ट हमें मत कहिए ना. ये मुल्क है, हम मुसलमान हैं और यहाँ पर हमारी पॉलिटिकल अधिकार है और सिविल सोसाइटी में. So you go on television also, a lot of journalists, for instance, in your tribe are now Muslims.
So how do you compare this with the status of the Lalo-speaking Muslims?
They are better, sir. They are much better.
The money flowing from...
No. Kerala has 100% education. Kerala has about 30% Muslims. All 30% are educated.
Left to be one.
So, That is also one thing. That the two states in India which are left, which don't believe in either caste or religion, which is left dominated, they insist on education. So the land distribution in Bengal and Kerala is complete. The education to women in Bengal and Kerala is of a very high level. The education amongst Muslims is of a very high level. Coming to your madrasa sawal, there is a large section of Muslims still, because when we are talking of 160 million, there is a lot of Muslims out there whose parents are small landholders, परचून की दुकान है, पान की दुकान है, वगैरह वगैरह. उनकी अब भी ऑप्शन ये है कि मदरसे में अपने बच्चे को भेज दें. Interestingly, the record for extremists emerging is not there. The record for fundamentalist Muslim is there, meaning कि वो माशाल्लाह दाढ़ी भी उसकी इतनी बड़ी है, टखने से ऊपर उसका पजामा भी है, वो 5 वक्त नमाज भी पढ़ेगा, वो अपने घर में जाके बोलेगा अपनी बीवी को कि तुम हिजाब पहनो, और तुम्हारी जो उसकी बेटी कॉलेज आएगी तो बीए के बाद इंसिस्ट करेगा कि नहीं अब तो तुम्हारी शादी करनी है, अब तुम्हें नौकरी नहीं करनी चाहिए. So therefore I am not labeling him in any way engaged in anti-Indian activities. But he will certainly, or there is a large number in madrasas who will argue against modern concepts of development as you and I understand. But what we do is that we have identified 26 madrasas. They are amongst the best. And our experience with them is wonderful. Because one thing that madrasa education is teaching in India is to tell them, A, to be exceptionally logical in argument and to place their point of view without, they only fear Allah. तो अपनी बात कहो, साफ कहो, पूरी करो और झगड़ा मत करो. It's a huge thing which we notice in our university, and therefore when a child from madrasa comes and say joins history honors, he's weak in English. उसको हम remedial English की classes कराते हैं 1 साल. दूसरे साल तक वो तैयार हो जाता है. Maybe he doesn't speak English like you, but he starts speaking English. Or we give them intensive coaching, reading the newspapers, reading the magazines, watching BBC in the evening so that they learn to speak English a little more. By the time he comes into the second year, we find that he has made up enormous ground because of his sincerity and because of a great desire that I have lost something in my early youth. I need to make up. And I must compete with all these other guys who are in my class. By the time he's finishing MA, I have, and I can boast of it, 100% campus recruitment. So we have 50% Muslims, we have 50% non-Muslims. All of them get campus recruitment, sir, by the time they are finishing their masters. That's a very big thing. So this also answers a question which people would understand कि private sector में हिंदुस्तान में फिरका परस्ती होगी, मुसलमान को एडमिशन, खासकर जामिया मिलिया इस्लामिया, my name is जामिया मिलिया इस्लामिया. So the child who is coming from a Muslim university, and we have a minority status. But despite having this, it is Tata who comes there, it is Ambani who comes there, it is Tata Consultancy who comes there, it is Adani who comes there, so on and so forth. और वो आके बैठते हैं, हम लोग बूथ्स लगाते हैं हर अपने फैकल्टी में, और 2 दिन 3 दिन का वो एक मेला होता है, and depending on children's qualifications, they go and they give their interviews. I would say, and with a very safe estimate, 97-98% students get campus recruitment. 2-3% वो होते हैं जिनको वैसे भी नौकरी ना मिले, मतलब आप भी आओ तो उनको नौकरी ना दो, and that's across the board, including Muslims, Hindus, everyone. It's a bad student, it's a bad egg, so you don't take him. So now, why don't Muslims get larger recruitment in the private sector? 2 reasons. A, and please understand that pertains to Muslims also, that people like to recruit those people who you are comfortable with. हमारे यहाँ का स्ट्रक्चर, तो अगर बनिया कंपनी है तो वो प्रेफर करता है कि एक तरफ एक बनिया को ले. Likewise, हमारे पास जो मुसलमान कंपनियां हैं, वो मुसलमानों को ज़्यादा लेती हैं. It's just that comfort zone. I'm not saying that there will not be a communal discrimination. Of course there will be in some companies. But by and large, I advised Reliance for many years. And we had no policy, and Reliance is a Gujarati company. People say, in Gujarat they are more sensitive than that. Particularly, they are vegetarian. They are exceptionally careful. They consider a lot of Muslims in their own buildings. कि ये तो unclean हो गए, यहाँ गोश्त कटेगा वगैरह वगैरह. But Reliance employs a whole lot of Muslims. कोई ये बच्चा आ रहा है computer sciences करके आया है, इसको ले लो. He's better than the other. He's looking at earning money, so he's going to take the best who comes to. No, it's sorry, sir.
Actually, I wanted to refer to what Najeeb Jung said.